before you get to practical public speaking side, the side of things, you've got to bring down the limiting beliefs, which is, I haven't got the gift of the gab, or, that person does. And so understanding that it's a skill that can be learned, and then understanding that you, for some reason, have been asked to speak in there. So you are already some sort of an authority or an expert, or they would have got somebody else. And people don't waste people's time by reading an essay. You're there to present. You're there to either deliver educational, motivational, inspirational, informative presentation.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing. And you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi Innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast today as my guest, Victor Ahipene. He's an entrepreneur, a speaker, an author, a podcaster, and a trainer. He helps business owners, corporate executives, and health professionals all over the world share their message to a larger audience by becoming powerful, confident public speakers. In his regular podcast, Public Speaking Secrets, Victor shares one quick tip on each episode to improve your public speaking. His philosophy is that public speaking is like riding a bike. It can be learnt, and once you know it, it will become second nature. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where between now and January 15, we are offering a complimentary marketing health check for your business, complete with a report and action steps for the next 90 days. We'll assess the current health of your marketing specific to your 90-day plan and give you a report on the 3 key steps you can take to transform your marketing into an effective lead generation machine to serve the people you care about. Just visit innovabiz.co/MAS to get started. This complimentary offer is only available until January 15, so get in quick. In our discussion today, Victor talked to me about the importance of focusing on just one key takeaway in each speech to make it memorable. We talked about how to use stories to reinforce your message and knowing your audience, who they are, and also where they are on their own journey. Without further ado, then let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Victor Ahipene. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Brisbane in Australia, Victor Ahipene, who is an entrepreneur, a speaker, an author, a podcaster, and a trainer. Now, Victor helps business owners and corporate executives, and also he focuses a little bit on the health professional space, which we'll learn about more. He helps them share their message to a larger audience by becoming powerful and confident public speakers. So I'm really excited to welcome Victor to the podcast. So welcome, Victor. It's a privilege to have you as a guest.
It's awesome to be here.
Yeah. Now, I alluded to the health professional space, and I know you were trained as a physiotherapist, and obviously you're a business owner and built a business, but you've moved back into what it turns out, we'll learn about more, was your kind of pet hobby when you were young, which was public speaking. So before we talk about all things public speaking, let's find out a little bit more about that childhood. So what did you want to do when you grew up as a child?
I think probably before the age of 10, I just wanted to play sports professionally or just play for the All Blacks or something, or play in the NBA. Unfortunately, ability and all those other things kind of start coming into play, and you start realizing that. And then I kind of got to a point, there were kind of two turning points that I guess ignited some sort of idea, or when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, it's not necessarily a passion. It's something you might, I guess, think that's a passion. And the first was public speaking, and the other was I broke my ankle playing rugby and went to a physio. And both of those, they happened kind of a couple of years apart. So I was already into the public speaking side of things then. And I guess with the public speaking at I think it was 13 years old when I started at high school, I was one of the few New Zealand Māori students, so Indigenous Māori students at the school, and there was a competition in the province I was living in, and I kind of forcefully got entered into it, having not really. I was always pretty confident and outgoing, but I think there's a big difference between being confident and outgoing and actually being a captivating speaker. And so I learnt that the hard way by getting up there awkwardly, stuttering, trying to read off these cue cards, and delivering what was in more than likely from memory a pretty average talk. As I said, with the sports side of things, I'm very competitive, and I was backstage and you'd meet the other speakers, and we're all like 13, 14 years old, and I was trying to figure out, like, did they have this on a sports field? You can see if someone's faster than you or can jump higher than you or things like that. Like, what did these people have that I didn't have? And I honestly couldn't put my finger on it. And then it was one of them said something about having to go and see their speech teacher now, and I was like, "What?" And we had them at our school, and that kind of was like, that's your unfair advantage, on this playing field. That's how you were better than me on here. And I mean, part ego, part competitive, whatever you want to call it. It was fortunate because my mum then enrolled me into public speaking classes. I started wagging assembly in the morning and going to them. I would avoid our once a week religious studies class to go to it. I would, and
so that was outside the school then, was it?
Yeah, so it was at school. It was a big part of our school, but I mean, I hadn't really tapped into it, and I was fortunate enough to have an amazing teacher, and by the time I had left school, I'd got a diploma in public speaking. I was one of the youngest people to ever achieve that. So I was actually teaching people at my school by the time that I'd left. So I'd kind of gone from stuttering in cue cards to a few years later in national speech competitions and teaching and graduating a pretty significant exam. And so I'd turned, I wouldn't even necessarily say a fear, but something that I wasn't necessarily putting my hand up to something that I absolutely loved, and that was the public speaking side of it. And then on the flip side, I broke my ankle when I was about 15 playing rugby, and I had this kind of arduous rehab to get back and fit for it. And the physio that I went to, he happened to used to be the ex-All Black physio. He had worked with professional rugby teams at Olympic Games, at Commonwealth, at everything. And as I said, a person who wanted to be a professional athlete and then realised the genetic abilities might not be there, it was pretty enticing. It was like, wow, I can go to
this is a way to get involved in that world.
Yeah, and so I got to the end of high school, and I was really left with this decision. I was thinking about going to this relatively hard to get into broadcasting school. It was journalism and broadcasting, and that was a 2 years of study. And the physio course I was going for was competitive entry. So it's easy to get into your first year, and you do it with medicine and dentistry and pharmacy and physio aspiring students. And at the end of your first year, you then apply and get into the next 3 years. And so I was still flipping a coin pretty much to the day that I went down to university, and said, well, if I don't get in after my first year, I can reapply to this other school and do 2 years there. Whereas, if I do 2 years, I probably won't want to then go back and start trying to study sciences and stuff. So obviously the story goes, I got through physio school eventually, and within 2 years, and I'm sure a lot of people out there listening have probably had aspirations in a particular industry, and then at a certain point have not necessarily become disheartened, but have become bored. Within 2 years, the physio that I went to at high school, he offered me his practice. I'd done placements with him during my studies. I'd worked with a professional rugby team. I'd worked over in Canada at a university with basically all my ideal clients and athletes. I'd done a lot of cool things within the first 2 or 3 years. And I was like, oh, that pretty much ticks off everything off that list. What do I do for the next 40 years? The rate of return was massively declining. And that's when I started kind of looking towards the entrepreneurial things and worked to start some online stuff. And then that eventuated to kind of go full circle, started a physio clinic within one of my friend's medical clinics that he was opening up. And then I gave a presentation about podcasting of all things from one of my previous podcasts that I used to run. And a few of the people there were like, oh, you're a really, really confident, you're a really great speaker, you're a great presenter. And it kind of gave them a bit of my backstory. And they're like, oh, would you like take a training for us if we put something together? And I was like, yeah, okay, there was enough interest. And so I think I had 6 people on the first, I put a 1-day training together. That was it. I was just like, yep, I'll do it, test the waters. And at the end of it, awesome transformations. Like I knew the transformations would be there, but it had been 10 years I've been speaking, but not teaching it. And it was quite cool adding the entrepreneurial business stuff into it that I'd learnt. And at the end of it, 4 of them said, all right, so what do we sign up to now?
Okay, yeah, what's next?
And I'm going, I was just, it was a 1-day thing. I'll get back to you. And so that as you can imagine, kind of started a flow-on effect to other things. And, really, I think gave me validation of, I accidentally tested the water and, it was nice and warm and people enjoyed what I was giving.
Yeah, there's so much I like about that whole story, right? From your childhood, the lesson or you identified very early on. And I think that's something that's really important in business today, right throughout business life, wherever people are on their journey. And that's that, having a coach in whatever area it is, even in the area that you might be really good at, is invaluable. The other one that I picked up on as you were talking about presenting about the podcasting is kind of going down the route of testing a training course before you put a lot of other effort into it, and then knowing that if you do a good job in presenting something like that people are likely to be interested in continuing to work with you and taking the next step.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things that you said with getting a coach or a mentor or whatever it is for whatever area you want to fast track. Like it's honestly stupid and it's so expensive not to. And I know it sounds very, very cliche. Like I've just got back into golf. I used to play all through high school, and I've just been getting a lesson every week, and my game's exponentially improved. Heading back towards it. And same with my public speaking. I'm still reading and learning from other people because there's so many, it's multifaceted. There's sales, there's boardroom presentations, there's investor pitches, there's all these different things that, the fundamentals stay relatively similar, but I still want to learn so I can service people as well as fast as possible. And you may as well, rather than try and figure it out yourself, get the people with the arrows in their back, lying face down in the dirt who have gone through it all. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who said this, but it stuck in my mind at the time, and that was, we learn from our mistakes, but it's a lot better to learn from other people's mistakes.
I 100% agree.
So in terms of, a lot of people aspire to get up on stage and speak and have some information or some skills to contribute to the broader world, but they're petrified of public speaking. I think you put it that, people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy, which to me is, I struggle to understand that a little bit. But on the other hand, I've seen people that are in that position. And so in terms of people that are in that position but are would really like to overcome that and get on stage and contribute whatever information they have to contribute, what kind of practical steps would you suggest?
I think the first thing is understanding, like I said earlier, just because you're confident and charismatic doesn't necessarily mean that overlays onto stage. You can still give a terrible, and it's not to scare people away. It's helpful if you are confident, but confidence often leads to overconfidence and arrogance when you're on stage, and you think because you're not saying and and pausing that the gibberish that you're rolling out is actually beneficial to your audience. So I mean, what I genuinely want people to, it's kind of the first part of like the mission of changing people's perception towards public speaking, is understanding that it's a skill. It's a skill that can be learnt and can be developed. Like I said, I wasn't great when I was 13. And it wouldn't have mattered if I was 13, 23, or 33. If I hadn't have developed those skills, the situation would have been exactly the same. I would have been standing there trembling with cue cards, or nowadays with a PowerPoint presentation, and just reading off it in some monotone, wasting everybody's time. And I liken it to riding a bicycle. Nobody starts off as a Tour de France cyclist. Like, there's a lot of things that go in before it. It might be you're in a walker, then you're on a little, tricycle type thing. You're on a bike with training wheels. Then you eventually lose the training wheels and you're riding around the backyard. And then you're onto the road and there's more things that you need to add in. And then eventually it's, the training and the repetition when you've already got a higher level of skill than most people. And I think once people can understand and grasp that concept of, all right, yes, I did learn how to ride a bike. Yes, I did learn how to, read and write and spell, or I did learn how to speak a language. Surely public speaking's exactly, it should fit into that category. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same. And there's certain, I'll start off with things that people need to, before you get to practical public speaking the side of things, you've got to bring down the limiting beliefs, which is, I haven't got the gift of the gab, or, that person does. And so understanding that it's a skill that can be learned, and then understanding that you, for some reason, have been asked to speak in there. So you are already some sort of an authority or an expert, or they would have got somebody else. That people don't waste people's time by reading an essay. You're there to present. You're there to either deliver educational, motivational, inspirational, informative presentation. Even if it's a wedding, you've been asked, because you might be the best man at a wedding. You are a subject matter expert on the groom, or ideally the bride and the groom. So you're being asked to give an insight to people who don't necessarily know certain aspects. When you're in the boardroom, you're not being asked just to go through the rigmarole of presenting some stuff. You are the expert or the authority. So you have to understand, a lot of stuff that people don't know. And when you're in that position, those people also don't know a lot of the stuff that you forget to say in your talk.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds funny, because the majority of people want to think that they're perfectionists.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they go, I need to write this down because I'm going to forget it. Okay, cool. Write it down and then read it, because trust me, I can read your 10, 15, 20-minute talk if you email it to me quicker than what you can deliver it with your pauses. So don't waste my time. Make it easy for me to consume. And then it becomes, okay, I can learn this skill. I'm an authority or an expert in this particular niche that I've been invited to speak up to. Why then, if you know more than everybody else and you know a lot about the subject, why is it that you then need to either try and memorize a whole talk, or you need to write it down? And I say cue cards, and when I say cue cards, it's synonymous with PowerPoint PowerPoint presentations. And I'm not bagging PowerPoint presentations. They're a useful aid.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be the talk.
Yeah, and I mean, being a physio, I literally just cringe when I've been to conferences and things like that, because we're inviting out Dr. So-and-so who's done their PhD in this, that, or something or other else. They walk out, there's either a podium or they say, greetings, everyone, and then they turn to 45 degrees so they can see their PowerPoint, and then they just read it verbatim, and you're like...
With their back to the audience often.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, great. Like, your evidence is great, but I don't really care about it because you didn't excite me. And, so those are kind of the short and simple ways of understanding, yes, you are an expert or an authority. If you are an expert or an authority in that space, you should know what you're talking about. And you should be able to, it might be initially that you speak off 2 or 3 points on a slide. Ideally, that's not ideal, but there should be points. There should be things that if you get stuck, you can look at that next point and just start speaking off it rather than reading a whole sentence. And that way, our brains are designed to want to finish the sentence or understand already what the speaker is going to be talking about. That's why you see on TV, it's like coming up after the break or on the next episode of Survivor. It's an open loop. And we need it to be closed, and that's what makes people stick around throughout the ads and things like that, and because they show you a little snippet. Whereas we try and often a lot of speakers will give out too much information. They'll either information overload, or they will, because it's all on the slides, people will start reading it and then they'll switch off. They'll switch off and they'll switch off.
So, I mean, I think, there's a couple of really great points you made there. The first one, I think, coming right back to the core of it is the belief system and the belief that, you need to be perfect and perhaps you're not good enough. And as you say, if you've been invited to speak somewhere, and even if it's just, would you deliver the address to the wedding party, you're considered the expert. You're being asked for a reason. So the, leaving aside that belief is going to be the biggest thing. And then you mentioned something early on, I think, in the example of one of the speeches you gave about podcasting. And that was, to me, that's important as well. And that's to be aware of the impact you're having on your audience. So seeing how they're responding and so on, because that can immediately change what your presentation is and how it's being perceived. It's essentially a conversation with somebody. If you think of a one-on-one conversation with somebody, generally, most people, I guess there's some that aren't, but most people would be aware when they're boring the other person.
Yeah.
When the other person is no longer interested in the topic they're talking about, or if they're rambling on too much or whatever it might be. And so if you take that approach into the public speaking, so yes, it's a group of people, yes, it might be a big audience, but getting that feedback. So I think that's really good. And then I love the open loops idea.
Yeah. It's and there's another I'm not actually sure if there's a specific name for it, but from a technique side of things, I like to teach people to start with a story. So it doesn't have to be about them. If it is about them, then don't make it about them. Just use it as a referencing point, and then use points within that story to then flow into your 2 or 3 points that you're going to be speaking about throughout it. And so make sure that your story is crafted in a way that you're not giving unnecessary information about the story, but there are certain points that later on you can reference back to them, because you see a good, like the best comedians out there go back to a joke that 30 minutes into their set, or they finish with it and you're like, you got me, I was not expecting that. And again, that's the kind of close and open loops. But
Billy Connolly is really good at that. So he kind of does about a half a dozen in some of his skits. I don't know if you've kind of paid attention to that. He kind of opens a whole lot of loops and then leaves you hanging, and then he kind of goes off, and it's almost at the beginning, it's almost like, he's completely lost it here. He's off on a tangent, and he's off on another tangent. And then at some point, it all comes back together again. It's really clever the way he does it.
Yeah. And with that, it's like if you can reference back or highlight the the key learnings from a story, then use that to flow into your points. And then at the end, rather than, and this is what I see so much, there's two things I absolutely hate, and I feel like throwing stuff at people when they're on stage. No, I don't. First off, when people come out and go, "Hi, I'm Victor, and today what I'm going to be speaking to you about is blah, 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 blah." And then at the end, they say, "And in conclusion, what I've spoken about is da, 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 da. So I encourage you to do whatever." What I prefer is just come out. Either you've been introduced onto stage, which is 99 times out of 100, and just start with a story. I was walking down the street the other day, and such and such, and there was a busker doing this, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious when they did blah, blah, and people were going, "Oh, they're straight up interested." People don't care.
Right, captivated.
People don't care what you're going to talk about. They care about what you are talking about. They'll find out what you're going to talk about when you talk about it, which is a bit ironic. But the other thing is, it shouldn't be. I want to change the wording around what a lot of people, because we learn public speaking predominantly from our English teacher when we're 13, 14, 15, and it's, here's a framework. I'm not a speech teacher. You have to give a presentation for 3 to 5 minutes, and we're going to mark it and write it on some cue cards, and make sure you've got an intro, some points, and a conclusion.
Well, of course, you mentioned memorization before, and I know you like to have frameworks and things to avoid memorizing something word for word, and I always think it's funny, but of course the traditional framework is, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you told them, which is exactly what you're saying is probably a little boring if you take it to the extreme. I often laugh when people say, either at some point in their presentation or at the end of their presentation, "Oh, I forgot this bit," and I say, "Well, I don't know your script. I wouldn't. Nobody in the audience knows your script, so they don't know you forgot. So there wasn't any need to say that. You can kind of loop back to something if it's important and weave it in. But do you have any recommended structures that can help underpin?"
What I tend to do first is look at what is your one overarching point. So that's kind of the top of the bottom, the base of the pyramid that you're gonna build off. Is, okay, what is the one thing that when my audience walks away, because you got to remember, we've all seen lots of speakers, how much do we actually remember? We'll remember that they're a good presenter and that their particular points were great, but what do we remember about them? Is it, if I said Simon Sinek, most people say, "Oh, you got to start with why with your business." You don't remember all the business analogies that he gave or the circles that he drew, unless you're, addicted to that stuff and you've watched it way too many times, which some of us have. But Martin Luther King, it's kind of, I have a dream, and what did that mean? Well, it meant equality for blacks and whites and everyone living in harmony, and all of them had just one overarching point. So you don't have to get bogged down with the semantics of everything. Go, if every single person in my audience walks away and they understand this message, or they take action on this particular thing, it will be a success. And because that will stop you trying to put too much information in to one particular talk, because you get it, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, people will try and overteach. And so you have your one overarching point that can usually have 2 to 3 be broken down to 2 or 3 points that'll highlight it and re-drum it in, and then to then write it down. If I was writing, I'd be like, what is my story that I'm going to open with? What are the 3 points that I can potentially weave into that story? How can I then talk about those 2 to 3 points? And at the end, what is my call to action? Not what is my conclusion, but what is my call to action? I want people to sign up now. I want people to move 30 minutes a day. I want people to go out and write a marketing or business plan for their business in this lunch break, whatever it may be. And this doesn't matter if you're, any type of talk. You look, I give the wedding one because people always say it's like weddings and eulogies. You can't apply all this stuff, and you absolutely can. Like, you charge everyone to toast at the end of it to, happiness and goodwill. You ask everybody to remember the good times at a eulogy. At the end of it, at the end of every talk, you should have a really strong call to action, because people know what you've spoken about. That's the kind of the overall blueprint, without us going for another 4 hours, would be over
training. But I think there's lots of great points there, and I'll put my hand up and say I'm definitely one that tends to be guilty of this also, in terms of providing an information overload, and sometimes, well, probably always. But perhaps unconsciously, it's making it more about us and what we know, and pairing it back to what's the one point I want the audience taking away. So making it about the audience, and then also, that structure that you suggested, kind of try to be entertaining as well as educational. I think that's great advice, and I like the call to action as well.
And it is hard. It's hard not to overteach, because if everybody's pretty much an expert in some industry, in some area of some industry, and so even if it's that you're taking 1, 2, 3 day training programs, break each section into, okay, we've got till morning tea. What do I want them to be confident with or to be competent with? Otherwise, we start going, how much can I cram into this? And everyone's just got fried brains. And I guess it all comes back to knowing who your audience is at that particular time. If you know that small business owners who are just starting out, well, trying to teach them Facebook ads and retargeting and everything like that isn't probably your best step, but teaching them maybe know, like, and trust, building the foundations of know, like, and trust, and taking people through a sales journey that they can at least start mapping it out. Then you can give them the next layer another time. Whereas we'll tend to brush over know, like, and trust and just jump into, here's how you set up a pixel and the Facebook retargeting and all those sorts of things. So don't drown people.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and one of my favorite topics is really getting to know your target audience and your target market in marketing. So I'm glad you said, knowing who your audience is and where they're at is a great way to then say, well, okay, what is the one point I can focus on here?
Yep. And people out of the talks I've given, people 100% get more value out of your talk. If you teach them a lot more of the why and not the how, and enough of the how that they can go and take action on. Why do you need to know this? And then, depending on their knowing them, you can then plus or minus the how.
All right. Now, you talked a little bit earlier about the analogy of learning to ride a bike and learning public speaking. So for those people that are kind of at the stage where they've still got trainer wheels on, or maybe they haven't even jumped on the bike yet, what are some of the steps they can take to kind of build the confidence from starting?
Build any confidence in the public speaking. I would literally grab that framework. This is what I do in a lot of my live seminars. Is I don't actually teach the people the framework because I'm a bit mean at the start, and I give them an impromptu topic. Like, if you type in impromptu public speaking topics into Google, and get your significant other or someone around you, hey, pick me a topic, write it down, and then I'm going to time myself and give me a minute, and then I'm going to give a 3-minute presentation. And initially, I do this to really just to be able to show people how far they come in half a day, in a day. They give it, they're trembling, they're spending the first 30 seconds saying I'm so and so, and today I'm going to be they're trying to drag out every last second, and then at the end of it they're talking for 5-6 minutes basically off the cuff. When I say off the cuff, when you're in a seminar, they've got 3 points written on a piece of paper that if they need to refer to, they can. But if you can speak impromptuly well, then speaking about something you're an expert in or an authority in, it becomes just second nature, because it eliminates the I'm scared of actually getting up in front of people and talking about something I don't know, to going, oh, I actually know this now. Like,
what I've been doing.
Yeah, I've ripped the training wheels off and I've ridden around the backyard 50 times. Now I'm confident to go down the road. You're still going to hit bumps along the way, and that's where you hopefully can fine tune it. But 100%, I would start with the framework that we talked about and implementing that within 1 minute. So writing down a quick story, 2 points, 1 or 2 points, and then what your call to action is going to be. And you can hold it there. You can still use it as a cue card to get started. It's just you're not looking down at it the whole time. It's just your prompt for your next point. Because as soon as I see people go from hi, today I'm going to be talking about, to like they've got that I like winter better than summer. Something ridiculous. There's lots of ridiculous topics out there that like that. But they start walking out and they go, oh, there's nothing better than a white Christmas. I remember when I was back in Canada, and I woke up in the morning, the kids were there, they'd all run to the Christmas tree, we all looked out the window and there was just snow piling down, and it was blah, 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 blah. And then they go into a couple of points about the benefits, and they go, then they finish with their call to action on why everyone should just live in endless winter or something like that. Yeah. But being able to just start with a story that most people have got a story that they can relate to. Yeah. If it's American politics and you know nothing about it, then, just pick another one. It's not, we're trying to live in a somewhat real world that makes you uncomfortable, but you don't have to necessarily make up absolute baloney.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is really fascinating, Victor. I could go on for ages and talking about that, but I'm conscious of your time. So I think it's time we moved on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round, and it's designed to help our audience. And they're primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions. Hopefully you'll give us some really insightful answers that will inspire our audience to go away and do something awesome today.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the number one thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
I think they need to look at other industries. So I do this in physio. I do it in my public speaking business. What are other industries that are either complementary or non-complementary doing that your industry isn't? And I think once you start looking at that, I'm always going, oh man, this is what should be happening in the physio world, or this is how we should be educating people more effectively. Because once you start looking at what other people are doing, it might not be a perfect, round peg in a round hole, but it doesn't mean that you can't get the sandpaper out and edge it off and get it in a good fit for your industry. So I think looking too much, we're stuck in our own little sphere where we're talking to other people who are involved in the same industry, and it's this circular thing where everyone's just spurting the same ideas. So I think innovation comes from looking outside of the box, which I think is looking at other industries that are doing things well.
Yeah, great suggestion, and it's something that if you kind of chunk it up in terms of here's what's happening there and how could that be applied to our industry, or what are they trying to achieve with that, and modelling off that can sometimes mitigate that square peg in a round hole kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I see it with physios. Physios and chiros have for some reason got some, I'm better than you or whatever, some ego attached to them on both ends for a lot of them. But I look at it, and chiropractors are so much better salespeople than physiotherapists. And I'm not saying unethical salespeople. They are just so much better at highlighting the problem and that they've got the solution and giving them the plan to answer it. And so people come back for maintenance with chiropractors. They, get them in X amount of times and they're confident in delivering it. The patient is confident in getting it. And, they're a lot better at getting those bulk bookings. And so looking outside of that and going, hey, how can physios do that is going to improve your bottom line. So, yeah.
All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Networking. I love networking. I love meeting new people, and I don't do well by myself. So I'll get friends around. I'll go around to their place. We'll meet up for coffee, and we'll just mastermind each other's businesses. What have you thought about doing this? I thought, again, it's the getting somebody outside of your sphere and going, hey, you should do this, and that. So 100% seeing what's working with other people and getting their insights. And it's also, I love doing it, and often I have to really work hard to keep the chip off my shoulder on taking other people's advice, which if my girlfriend listens to this, she'll agree with.
All right. So, getting out amongst other people and listening to what they've got to say. Yeah. So taking feedback on board sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have a favorite tool or system for improving your own productivity?
Yes, I've got one on my phone. The first one, it's App Detox, and I use it. I think I've got two of them. App Detox. You can set what times you want apps to be unable to be used on your phone. So I can I don't want Facebook to be functioning on my phone from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. And so anytime I try and open it, it just shuts down. And then there's another similar app on my phone. I'm not sure what it is called, and it'll stop me opening it'll just remind me. You can set, I only want to open my phone 30 times a day, and it'll say, oh, you've already opened it 10 times and it's only 8 a.m. Do you really need to open this? And you're going, no. So just breaking, that's probably my worst habit is my phone. And just not being, I'm not present with it, but just using it as escape whenever there's a spare moment, rather than being productive and focused. So that is, if I do that, all the other softwares and things that you can use are a second fiddle, because if I'm not using them, they're all pointless.
Yeah. All right, that's an interesting one, and I've got an interview coming up with a chap, Pete Traynor, who's in the artificial intelligence space, and I'm sure he'd be interested in that, because he's very much into the human aspect of the interaction with all these, all the technology, and his theory is that we actually dumb ourselves down by being addicted to these things.
Yeah,
so, interesting tool. Yeah. All right. What's the best way to keep a client on track?
It's the difficult one. I mean, I've been in the space of online trainings and things like that, and I think many people will know the stats on completion of a lot of courses and things like that. So I think creating a community and a movement, some of the best stuff is creating accountability partners within the group. Which I think I've found really good, rather than trying to leverage your own time further. I mean, ideally working people live and in immersed spaces, but that's not practical in a lot of senses. For me, it's setting people up with another person within the group who's joining at a similar time, so that they can then keep each other accountable, have them have the automated emails to keep them accountable and things like that. Like, have you guys been working on week 2? Make sure you get in touch, message your accountability partner, and then they feel guilty, which is good. Guilt isn't always a bad thing. Get them feeling guilty, so that they message that person, and then together they keep making those small steps forward.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I've been in a couple of communities online with training programs and things that I've been involved in where they've done that really well, and it's very effective. So, good advice. Okay, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Oh, it's I've been stewing on that one recently as well, because I'm about to start creating a lot of content, and I want it to be polarizing. And I mean, I think clickbait still works. The clickbait terms that you put on a Facebook Live or online or in blog posts, they work because it creates intrigue and open loops and closed loops and those sorts of things. But people get bored when it's, that was all it was. So I really think it's about being polarizing and being consistent with it, and it being consistent with you as well, that's the bit I'm probably stewing over, is like, I don't want to bag other people in the industry because I've got nothing against them. Like, I don't want to be polarizing in that sense. But I think it's probably being polarizing. I follow a lot of Russell Brunson stuff, probably being polarizing about the old system versus the new system, which I tend to like, is, the way that people generally think is what you can call the old system, versus the new system, which is the way that you do it. So you can say, oh, this is what everybody does and this is why it's wrong. And you're just kind of painting a brush over the majority. So, most public speakers do this and this and this. And, it's crappy, and we've all seen it and we've all sat through it. It's, not hugely polarizing, but it kind of, contrasts well. So I think, understanding your audience, like you said earlier, that's the biggest thing.
And taking a position then,
taking a position and then sticking with it, being consistent with it. So yes, it's probably an answer I can't give 100% because it's literally something I have to jump into your past episodes and see what everyone else says.
A lot of people say be yourself, and I think you've kind of alluded to that in some ways, because you said be polarizing, take a position, but it's got to be consistent with your own values and beliefs. And I think that's really at the core of it.
It's but at the same time, a lot of people are quite boring. And so being yourself is great, but you still you want a persona. Like I say I follow Russell Brunson. He doesn't. He said he's like the most introverted person ever. If you come up to him at the supermarket, he's like shy and nervous that he's going to say something really wrong. But he's this outgoing person on webinars and on stage and things like that. So it's understanding, be you, just be like, maybe a little bit more energetic version of you, or figure out how you can strengthen your weaknesses. Because there's a ton of, in public speaking, there's a ton of awesome introverted public speakers. So you can still be you and be a bit more exciting.
Okay, great advice. Thanks, Victor. This has been really great. Now, where can people reach out and thank you and maybe find out more about your public speaking training?
Jump over to publicspeakingblueprint.com. It's pretty much everything there. I've got a group on Facebook. It's called Speaker Nation. That's a free group you can join. But at publicspeakingblueprint.com, it's got my Public Speaking Secrets podcast. It's got my book that I just launched under the same name, and then a ton of other resources that can get you started and on the right track.
And I think in the podcast you actually read from the book in some of the episodes.
One of the chapters I did was a bit of a teaser into the first chapter, and I'm just in the process of recording the audio version of it for everybody out there who's like me and struggles to read a book, but
likes to listen.
So,
all right. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in their field?
I don't want this to be a canned response, so give me a second. But to be a leader, you've got to be comfortable with positioning yourself. So I say that with public speaking. I've helped people with podcasting, so it's the same. It's going back to understanding you're an expert. If you know more than 8 out of 10 people, then cool, you're an expert. But to be a true leader, you've got to get out in front of as many people. So I think actually I'll take all of that back. Understand marketing, learn marketing. If you want to be a true leader and you want to have true impact, I see myself and a lot of other people who have been on the journey, we've been the best kept secret because we didn't know about marketing and getting ourselves out there in front of people. You don't have to be the most skilled or knowledgeable leader, but if you can have an impact on 100,000 people more than the person who knows more than you, you're going to have more of an impact as a leader or thought leader or whatever you want to call it. So understand marketing. I think it all comes back to.
Well, as a marketer, of course, I really like that answer. I think it sort of ties in with what we were talking about earlier in terms of knowing your audience, and with marketing, it's about knowing who your potential clients, who your ideal clients are, and what their needs are, and then how can you reach them, and how can you deliver a message to them that tells them about what you have that might address their needs.
Yep. And then I think the next level is just 80-20 after that. Figure out how you can get 80% of the results. Is it one event that you need to speak at to open all the doors, or rather than trying to speak at 20 different events and running yourself thin, or reaching out to 100 different companies with a canned response to try and make a lead, or writing one awesome one to one particular person, as that's going to have the massive effect. So, yeah.
All right. Finally, then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
My old podcast, I had a couple of hundred guests, and one of them was Daniel Flint from Chapter 1. And he runs, from Thank You. They have Thank You water and things in the supermarket.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Amazing story. His book's Chapter 1. I've got no vested interest. I think they're going to do the most good out of anybody that I know in the world. Their story's amazing. And if you're talking about innovation and going outside of it, then definitely go and try and get Daniel on. He's an amazingly friendly guy, or even Justine, his wife. They're both awesome. Their book's amazing. I'll stop fanboying over them, but that's who I would say to get onto there next.
Okay, all right. Well, Daniel and Justine, if you're listening to this, look out for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Victor Ahipene. All right. Now, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today and your insights, Victor. This has been really fascinating. I've enjoyed it immensely, and there's been a lot of really good points on how to kind of overcome that belief of being afraid of public speaking and not being good enough, and how to take some steps to move forward. So thanks again for sharing all that with us, and I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch.
My absolute pleasure, everybody. And look forward to connecting with some new people.
Excellent. I hope you enjoyed that insightful conversation with Victor and took away some ideas to improve your speaking. Maybe you learned something to improve your speeches, your presentations, or even your written material. Or, if you haven't yet started speaking, are now inspired to give it a try. Victor shared so many tips with us. I particularly liked the one about having just one key takeaway in every speech. Applies to any publication really, and something I definitely need to improve myself. I'd love to know what you took away from Victor's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/Victor Ahipene. That is VictorAhipene. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Victor Ahipene. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Victor there, as well as links to the public speaking blueprint and the other resources we mentioned. Victor suggested I interview Daniel and Justine Flynn of Thank You Water on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Daniel and Justine, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Victor Ahipene. Remember to visit innovabiz.co/MAS to access the complimentary marketing health check for your business. And remember, this offer is only complimentary until 15 January 2019. So go over to innovabiz.co/MAS now. Don't delay. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review, because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, If you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.